Never mind. Hello? Hello? The light's on. Right, yeah. Can you hear me? You can hear me now. I can hear me now. So that's good. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Poetry Business New Poets Prize reading. This is kind of a launch reading for these four poets. Although the official publication date is June the 1st, we have the pamphlets, so that's good. And so it's that sort of lovely moment of seeing the books for the first time in real life and getting to give poets their copies, which is a lovely feeling. So one of my other identities is that I work for the Poetry Business and I work with the New Poets Prize. So I've seen these pamphlets in various stages of editing, and it's really rewarding to see it all come together. It's absolutely fantastic that we're here today celebrating them. And they look like this. So beautiful. I will show you them all individually as we go along. They actually look a bit nicer than these because these are the proofs, so they're a bit more shiny. The real ones are kind of matty and tactile and lovely. I am going to introduce the first of our four poets today, Serena Alagappan, who received her AB in Comparative Literature and Creative Writing from Princeton University in 2020. She then studied social anthropology and literature at Oxford as a Rhodes Scholar, and she has edited poetry for the 30th Annual Mays Anthology and the Oxford Review of Books. Her poems have appeared in the London Magazine, the American Journal of Poetry, the Colorado Review, and elsewhere. Serena's pamphlet is called Sensitive to Temperature, and it seeks out the precariousness and sensitivities of language, as well as the fragilities of the world it represents. These are eco-poems that experience time on a human and non-human scale, from the movements of rock to the sources of rivers. Big round of applause, everybody, for Serena.
Hi. Thank you so much, Susanna, and thank you so much for working with all of us this whole year. It's been really rewarding, as you said, to finally be able to see the pamphlets, and a big congrats to Beth, Tom, and Chloe as well, and I'm really honored to share this moment and prize with you guys. So I'm just going to jump into it. So this pamphlet is, as Susanna mentioned, sort of a pamphlet of eco-poetry, and I'm also kind of interested in how that environmental degradation plays out in more local environments, like between human beings and in our interpersonal relationships as well. So the first poem I'm going to read is called Slip Face. Gazing up at a long, shallow angle of loose sand recalls the typical dread. If I reach out, will you make time for me? The steep lee size of those aeolian landforms involves erosion. What is left, besides deflation, desert, and pavement? There exist geological agents, such as rivers, glaciers, and waves, water really, who offer sediment. Among these transformations comes, has the moment passed? Sun radiates off the slip face, and longing in its breath, I shake my head toward the dune. No, I say, the moment's never passed with you. I'm very nervous. I'm sorry. I'm like shaking a little. Okay. The second poem I'm going to read is called Aurora, which is also kind of the inspiration for the behind the lettering of the cover. Rory would bleed so pretty like morning, but in a season where light leaks rare, where light is green, marking a birth or all that's pure. Rory smiles 'cause she's fragile, but icy too. These days, it's hard to remember how good a gash in the sky feels, thawed across one's view, or losing track of whose fingers belong to whom. even more difficult to recall what was beautiful without witness. I think ignorance is both a blessing and a curse. Everything became slippery, confusing after the first. And then the next one is called Leisureland. No longer played, the game is called Cosmic Crane. It's an abandoned arcade, and this booth sports a painted rocket tearing toward your camera. Yoda, Spider-Man, and Peter Rabbit droop, hung on the gate in front of a mirror. Settled in the sea of plastic hollow balls lies a unicorn, stuffed cadaver, pupils bulging on its side like a valley sleeper with bullet wounds. Magic horse, relaxed and haunting. Big prizes, repeat twice in block letters. Fists thumping glass, foggy from small hot mouths, vending machine like Christmas morning, and on the right, a desperate whack-a-mole. Every animal skull a future, rising like a fig, evading its own shadow. How a groundhog's cloudy ceiling cries spring. Then the next one was my attempt at a satirical poem. As you can tell, most of them are very earnest, but this one was trying to be a bit of a departure. It's called Shop Local. The stone pine is local, but a blueberry plant sprouts rampant. The wife takes to it with shears. She doesn't mind the bees. Her smash of avocado isn't local, but it's heaping with feta in a square city with prime dimensions. She drinks jitterless CBD-infused cold brew, bred on campus by two buddies in a frat house. Before the tech bubble, she needed maps. Her dot didn't move, only guidebook pages and sweaty hands. In this nuptial story, the camera zooms in on the curtain, its shadow, two empty bottles of flat oaky vino, then the woman, who identifies as married, flinching, asking to be alone, a single tear on a tightrope. Then this poem is called After the Mushroom at the End of the World, and is inspired by Anna Singh's book, The Mushroom at the End of the World. And yeah, it's a really amazing book about like tracing the commodity chain of the matsutake mushroom from foragers in the Pacific Northwest to Japanese delicacies. And it's also just about how to kind of try to find hope in sites of human destruction and the way the mushroom kind of grows in these sites of nuclear disaster. So I found that very inspiring. And so I wrote this poem after reading it. And the fifth stanza references the end of Carl Phillips' poem, If You Go Away. These remedial gestures, how a spinning bulk of garbage in the sea becomes a holy vortex for a plastic bag's vagrancy. How landfill picking transforms for garden artists. Pluck, prune, and glean, like you're foraging treasure on behalf of trash. How after nuclear disaster, mushrooms grow on reactor walls, harnessing radiation like purple allium's photosynthesized light. Happy globes bursting, these flowers can nurture budding stars in climates on the drier side. Drought tolerant, they'll keep alive. I read once that there's a kind of love that doesn't extend itself both ways between two people equally because it doesn't have to. When air explodes, hot and buoyant, it bubbles and expands, waltzes with open legs and a rising skirt, condensing debris, sucking energy from decay. What's left at the end of the world, besides lichen, missile clouds blocking the sun, and a harvest for two that can only be tilled by one? And then, is the timing going okay? I'm not sure. Let's see. Okay, I have like a few more minutes. Okay. Okay, this poem is called, my poems are pretty short, so there are only a few more left, but I'm going through a couple of them. This one's called Even Now Assembling. Even now, this dreamscape is assembling. Even as the screws twist left, the only thing we built together is unfinished. The dresser's cardboard spine pinned, but drawers on the floor, severed panels I step over in the dark. Noting each detail, I watched you count each nail. Because I'm impatient, I'll leave it this way, gaping, with sunrise seeping through my window shades. I want to wake with a stutter or a slap. I no longer believe in things coming ready-made. I expect to need a hammer. When I've slept enough, I'll pluck a costume off its hanger. And when I spin in that pretty dress, it'll be like screws are in my feet. This one is called Holy. Holy those colors in rain after drought, a puddled vow, iris damp and aching. Holy the indigo aura that casts doubt on a landscape's verity, fog or foam, snow caps or sea. Holy the difference between solid and liquid. This then, a cloud thrums, only temporarily pregnant. Holy how time morphs between shores, how when suspended in ice, petals burn to touch. Holy their will to wither, unholy their right to lie. Holy to be mummified. Holy atmosphere of glass, shattered by the unjaded. Holy temple on the beach, which the tsunami passed. Holy Hanuman, monkey-headed deity, turning winds in his hands. Holy statue, draped in marigolds, tearing open its chest. Holy stars, shrill in the sky. Holy the potato hauled out of the soil. Holy the hair-thin seed of the potato plant. Holy the volcano, and the one spared from the volcano, and the volcano's fertile sand. And then just for the last one I'll read, it's the last poem in the pamphlet, and it's called Let's Catch Up Soon. You'd like to ventriloquize that leaf, or the veins bulging inside it, cul-de-sac of the clementine wedge, bumpy with seeds, one more dead-end street. Pulp thick with fruit hair, tree blood, lavender honey, syrup boiled and tapped, one more sweet thing to extract. Waiting for fruits to soften is waiting for a friend with whom it's been a long time since you've spoken. You'd like to ventriloquize the rot, the fur, the bowl going bad, the brown parts of the peach, the mush of berries, apple skin wrinkling, pieces of flesh reconsumed by soil. It's true you speak for muck, but time is still mold. Hold your breath, deceptive cadence, it grows. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Serena. I love those. I love the sort of macro-ness of those poems, zooming into like tiny little seeds, but then enormous ideas. It's fantastic, thank you. The next poet I'm going to introduce is Tom Branford. Oh, that says read bio from pamphlet, so I obviously pasted the wrong one. Tom is writer-in-residence at Manchester Cathedral and a recipient of the New Poets Prize 2022, of course. He organises the poetry reading series More Song in Bradford. Tom's pamphlet is This Is Not an Epiphany, which examines inner and outer landscapes that have become inhospitable, where people are burnt by business as usual. This collection is attentive to shifting landscapes where warehouses spring up on empty land and the incremental austerities that constitute our living. Its lyric absorbs the shocks and crises of survival within them. A round of applause for Tom.
Near the motorway turn-offs, midriff of noise, cheek by jowl with a graveyard, they're planning to build a warehouse in the floodplains. 23 meters tall, 317 meters long, 178 meters wide. At night, the graveyard is dark. Silence heaps at the stone perimeter where the world crouches under trees, scabbed with oak moss. I am setting you this very real scene. Sodium streetlights not yet replaced by LEDs. The raised grain fields skewered with markers. What is left to soak up rainfall, to soak up nightfall in a taxi back home from the city? I tell the driver there is not enough money here, and it is almost so beautiful. I love winter, and trying to get through each day, to see the sunrise during my pre-dawn piss. I think we're always trying to do the same thing, feeling safe or to perfect. The driver orders a chicken burger to collect after drop-off, and the say no to Amazon banners are wet with glare. Thank you. Thank you. I'm incredibly anxious. Yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone for helping with this book and this project. Jasmine, I want to thank you for reading every aspect of it and the things absent from it. And Chloe, Beth, Serena, thank you for your support. And Susanna, thank you for your support as well. So a lot of the poems in this collection deal with crisis, or crises, should I say, the never-ending cascade of them. And I think what my project was with the book is trying to examine how experiencing crisis kind of affects and pressurizes our emotional life and changes the way that we view and inhabit the world. So I'll read some poems. Parenthesis. Swift circumflex the sky, dull as the underside of tinfoil, the cleanness of genetically modified fruit. I researched the day we met as an astronomical event, packed to the flanks with onyx and citalopram. It was the 28th day of summer, moth-like and sweet as if everything is powered by contrast. If time worked for us, this gift would be a barrel of Brent crude oil, heart-shaped nights in the Midland Hotel, not even stunned, but an absence of violence. Instead, I refuse to pay rent until they plaster my asymmetric wounds. Thank you. So the book moves through geographies, and I think every kind of place you inhabit, you're a different person in that time and space that you inhabit it. So there's a kind of dialogue going on between space and identity within the book. And this poem was written in London last summer when it was 40 degrees and ungodly hot and inhospitable. And the place I was living had a hole in the roof. So naturally, when the rain came after the heat wave, my flat was flooded. So, and I paid £700 a month for that for 12 months. And this poem, before I read it out, this was published in Wild Court, and it reworks some of The Mower by Philip Larkin. In every house, nobody sleeps. Nocturnal out here, in wild escape, the gauzy texture of extreme heat, Walthamstow and Leighton beyond, arguments sheltered by hedgerows, swallowing benches. We know it's light pollution, smouldering the East London fresco, but think this stifling haze and aureole, draped over commons, scorched but open. It's just a bit of debris, you say, edging closer to the breathing mass, saint to an angel. Equal parts trepidation and awe, knowing to touch a thing is to ruffle its world. Stippled as a skyline in your torch, pin dropped in this strip, not jammed against blades or mauled unmendably but snuffling, still touched by light, before commuting into the undergrowth. We whisper, I love you, small companion, burnt by business as usual. I'm going to read a long poem next, so I need some water. Lubrication. So this is the title poem, and it's constructed in 7-line stanzas, and I consider them like half sonnets. And there was so many more of these, and I had to like chop it down loads, and it reminded me of when Leonard Cohen was writing Hallelujah, and he wrote about 60 verses or so, and he had to cut them all down. And that comforts me in a way, because no one bought that album for 10 years, and then it became the most popular song in the world. Not that this will be. So it starts with a quote from Judith Butler. Let's face it, we're undone by each other. And if we're not, we're missing something. One does not always stay intact. This is not an epiphany. From its yoky sheen and song, I spotted a gold crest in shrubland across from the Calderdale Way. An afternoon spent catching tears on my touchscreen, perched on a dry store wall. Heat chisels embarrassment as the goat bleached humiliation. It began in November as you flew south. I'm taking it like a man. Two girls are TikTok dancing under the shelter of a blossom tree, decorated with just a few cherried boughs, enough to flash in the late sun. Swaying outside the Heart and Lung Research Centre, you hope they're only waiting for the bus and not convulsing, languageless, anticipating someone's results. There's a running joke that a regular at the church inn Upper Mill always sat stooped on a corner stool for a sweeping view of the valley. And when they built a private cemetery lower in the Green Dale, he reserved a lot there, saying it's the closest place he could get to the end of the stout-stained bar. Taking out the recycling, a pair of grey lags flew southwesterly, honking in the crisp blue morning, tasered by an absentee, defecting sertraline just to trial another capitalist palliative, waking 3 a.m. every night until something stabilizes, magpies root on the empty football field. Steve was my driving instructor when I was 17. He said, intrusive thoughts are like leaves floating downstream. You don't have to pick them out. He was a recovering alcoholic and gambling addict who found God trembling. He showed me videos of the church choir parked roadside during my frequent panic attacks. Thanks. This is not as simple as you might think. Recovering on an ailing earth, I've got too much love left over. It won't all stay in my body. Imagine a man unstable as an atom, falling apart like radioactive decay. It began in November, such loose contours, all my layers couldn't hold. I was not multitudes, just something like water. I changed course, turning into the gardens of Ordsall Hall, coaxed by tulip planters and gleaming brickwork. The air was warm and still around the fragrant Tudor knot, until the groundskeeper appeared from behind an ornamental fir and spoke to me about human progress, the lengths a nation will go to. Back at the caravan park in Ripley, maybe just you and me, Dad, when I was 8 or 9, there was a girl, Siobhan, black hair, blue eyes. Up by the lake, we fed bread to the wildfowl until it burst into seasonal rain when I ripped the bread bag and walked her home, wet plastic covering her dark hair. Cycling to Chorlton through a cyclone of cherry blossom in the golden early evening. My hands pruned from hours soaking in the bath. All day I've been writing about regional pride, which is to say about love flourishing over time. Last night I rode home by the full moon's light as everyone grew wilder and wild. Through the hot wind, a fox screams like a boy, knifed and knifed again in the humid night. I wake feeling tumbled from the machine, all felted and bleary, rousing with raw hunger, but not enough to beg. I beat my fists into my stomach because all I want is to be tender. Just know I wanted kindness above all things. When the sun cracked like an egg on the pavement, blowing cobwebs from my limbs, I flew up the ship canal, disoriented by downy gosling, kneeling to touch speared water hawthorn. I don't expect you to believe me, but a dove flew out from under the swing bridge, and a man with my name spoke softly to me. Forgive me, this is not an epiphany. Memories are luminous, detached things. Embers after everybody leaves, I could listen to you talk until the stars lie down, like a field in lambing season. Say my name because after all I'm not God's favourite. Why can't we carry on pretending, at least just until morning, slipping between each other like silt through water, our mouths open. Thank you. Yeah, cool. So that was a title poem. And I'll read one poem set in neighbouring Bakewell. Owling. In the black soup of lampless country, you goggle the window for nightbirds, while I stare forward, searching for nothing, in the mud and rain Rorschach, the fragile grit of a decommissioned child, my libido siphoned at the crossroads. Tomorrow there will be a solar storm. Disorienting animals and trains will be cancelled by an atmospheric wind. Unvoyaging on the hourly bus, seats occupied by diminutive hopes, we are running out of air in the archives of winter. There are no owls, only exhausted snowdrops. Maybe it's the brooding in my heartburn which attunes me to the earth, below the thin soles of these dead man's shoes. The gale in your breath, turbulent with dissatisfaction, uproots hairs on my neck, your feral engine turning over, practicing happiness. I want you in a small, miserable way. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tom. It was really nice, really good to hear those poems read out loud. It was fantastic. I am now going to welcome Beth Davis, who I think I'm right in saying Beth has like the home crowd today. If you're not related or a family friend or a friend of Beth's, give a cheer. Okay. There are some of you. That's reassuring. So this is Beth's pamphlet, The Pretense of Understanding, which explores loss, not just of loved ones, but of youth and adolescence. In these poems, where time can stand still or run backwards, the reader finds themselves caught in longing moments of looking back at childhood. They remind us to run in the snow while we get the chance. Beth Davis is an emerging poet based in Sheffield. Her poetry has been published in Poetry Wales, Atrium, Rust and Moth and the Pulp Poets Prize, as well as anthologies such as Candlestick Press's, oh sorry, I ran into that, 10 Poems About Flowers and Valley Press's Verse Matters. I haven't punctuated this very well. She won second place in the 2021 Dead Cat Poetry Prize. It's very specific. Guess what the poem has to be about. And in the 2022 Magdalena Young Poets Prize. In addition to being a member of Hive Poetry Collective, Beth is a graduate of the Writing Squad and Durham University. Welcome.
Hiya. Is that all right? Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah. So I'm going to start with one about my grandma and grandpa's house, or rather the garden of their house. And I think sometimes as a poet, or just as a person who maybe overthinks things a bit too much, sometimes you sort of encounter a situation where you're like, this feels too much like a metaphor, and I didn't ask for this like emotional metaphor world, but it does mean that you can get a poem like this. So there we go. The garden at William Street. The plants have outlawed us from your house by barricading the garden door. We become fairy tale princes, pushing aside briars, hacking at what was once well tended. Mum strains against secateurs, the slow slice of metal through wood, the release when a branch falls. I drag thorny limbs into the forest and cast them among nettles. Later, at the care home, you don't notice our scratched legs, dirty shoes, the tang of grass clippings. Your mind, too, is overgrown. Your words behind thorns, my name a house you cannot reach. I hold your hand, wishing I could tame that wilderness. Next, I'm going to read the one that the title is taken from, The Pretense of Understanding. And I think the reason I went with that title is because I feel like a lot of the time in poetry and in life, we're kind of pretending that we understand what's going on. And sometimes poetry is a way of confronting those things that we don't quite know how to understand, and also a way of coming to terms with that lack of understanding. That's not necessarily in this poem specifically, but it's why I went with that phrase. And this is, for some reason, one of a few dead animal poems in the book. And it's kind of based on a memory from a holiday I went on as a child. Cleaning the pool. Each day we fished 6- and 8-legged things from the water, the net teeming with bugs that had met their chlorinated end. Despite our parents' disapproval, we tipped the bodies into a glass jar and kept it by the poolside, a morbid greenhouse baking in the Italian sun. We did not try to identify species. We had no need for that pretense of understanding. Roll credits. Our fascination was in this unsorted tangle of shell and wing and abdomen, in which it was hard to tell where one ended and the next began. One kid speculated how they'd look as they dried out. He asked the adults to place their bets on which parts would decay and what would be left behind. Another declared our aim to fill the jar to the top. He kept track of the rising line with the same enthusiasm he showed over his Match Attacks album. A third held that vessel with reverence, always made sure we placed it somewhere safe. When I gazed into the jar, like it was a crystal ball, I could almost hear the legs scuttling, wings fluttering, the whisper of what they'd once been. At the end of the week, our parents made us throw away the contents of the jar. I don't remember if we grieved. Tonal shift that this is another sad poem about dementia, but it does have Harry McClary in it. For anyone who's not familiar with Harry McClary, like in the books, the dog goes along and meets a series of other dogs, and so it's like a trail of dogs going through the book and having adventures in each of the books. And so that is a bit of context, I suppose. Final visit. We used to read Tennyson and Wordsworth together. Now we stick to picture books. Today it's Harry McClary. You like the rhymes and the drawings of dogs. I start reading to you, but halfway through the book you take over unexpectedly, your voice carried along by the tide of words, your eyesight sharp even without your glasses. When we reach the end, you begin turning the pages back again. I can't tell if you've forgotten the usual direction or if you just don't want the story to be over. You read the whole book in reverse. Animals retreating through hedges, moonwalking down the street, leaping backwards over fences, none of them looking in the direction they are going. For you, it's no more disjointed than the other way round. You don't remember a page once it's no longer in front of you. I wonder if we'll stay forever in this perpetual present, reading back to front, then front to back, over and over, trying to make the story return to itself. And next I'm going to do my poem about IKEA. I feel like often the amount that people like this one depends on how much they like IKEA. But something that I like to do when I go to IKEA, and I'd recommend it if you want to, is they have all of the rooms that are kind of set up as though they're rooms in someone's house with like all of the kind of decor, which always has like a very unified colour scheme, and then there'll be like little knickknacks about to kind of give the idea that it's someone's house. And I like to look at those rooms and kind of think about who are the people that live in this sort of imaginary space. And there's kind of the little clues there to think about. And so this is kind of inspired by me doing that. And it's called The Wonderful Everyday. And again, that depends on how much you like IKEA, whether you understood that. What strangers live here? I look around the living room for clues. Maybe he's the music lover, and it's his record player on the side table, brand new but missing the needle. She loves to read her favourite book over and over, but buys a new copy each time, the same edition, hoping for a different ending. Identical books crowd the shelves. He doesn't mind because the spines match the wallpaper. The drawing on the fridge shows a triangle-roofed house, a row of faceless stick figures waving in the front garden, parental love evident from the act of display. I wonder whether they are happy, wearing their stock smiles in a wedding photo, teeth impossibly bright. In the kitchen cupboard, I find jars filled with pictures of food. They sustain themselves on the ideas of things. Is this enough to build a life from? Are these 3 walls enough? Maybe they are saving up for a 4th. Looking up, I see the ceiling is much further away than it should be. Enough empty air to call sky. Is that where they've gone, the family who lived here? I imagine following them up the half-made stairs onto an upper floor that doesn't exist. And I'm going to finish with the last poem in the book. I don't often remember my dreams, but I'm glad I remembered this one because it got this poem and it also felt like maybe it was trying to tell me something. I often dream of ladders. Last night, I emerged into a long room. 2 rows of cots lined the walls, a baby in each one. I somehow knew each baby would grow into someone from my life. Here, red-faced and wailing, was the boy I sat next to in Year 10 English. Sucking her thumb, the girl at whose house party I first tried beer. And waving his tiny fists, a university course mate who always had something to say in seminars. In every crib, another acquaintance who was born the same year as me. As I peered down at an infant who would one day be my flatmate, a deep urge seized hold of me. Not broodiness, but the need to find the baby who would become me. As I walked the middle of the 2 rows, looking left, then right at each pair of cots, as if carefully crossing a very wide road. I thought I'd recognize myself, as a mother recognizes her child, but I searched without success. Even so, I could not rid myself of the longing to hold that tiny, wide-eyed creature, the part of me around which the rest grew. What else is the point of time travel, if not to cradle the smallest, softest versions of ourselves, if not to sing a lullaby, to try and soothe them when they cry? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Beth. That was fantastic. As you read that IKEA poem, I was thinking I've possibly had all the most cathartic arguments of my life in IKEA. It's one of those places, isn't it? It does things to people. Our final new poet of the afternoon is Chloe Elliott, and this is Chloe's pamphlet Encyclopedia. It's a playful and visceral pamphlet that explores boundaries of identity and the search for meaning, using poems that delight with richly tactile language. Formally varied, these poems are unflinching in their physicality. Chloe Elliott is a poet based in Durham. Is it still Durham? No, York, yeah. Right. Thank you, Chloe. Chloe Chloe Elliott is a poet based in York. She is the gold winner of the 2020 Creative Future Writers Award. Her writing has been featured in Poetry Birmingham Literary Journal, Bath Mag, Strix, The North, Bedtime Stories for the End of the World, and Magma, amongst others. She is currently creative apprentice for modern poetry in translation and works for Aesthetica. Warm welcome for Chloe Elliott.
I just want to say that was such an amazing reading from Beth. Oh my God, I'm properly floored by it. It was amazing. Me and Beth go back. We've been writing together for like 3 or 4 years now, and it's just so lovely to. 3 or 4 years, 'cause actually it might be longer. Yeah, a long time. A lot of trauma bonding and a lot of poetry rooms. Yeah, it's such a pleasure to be able to share this space with Serena and Tom and Beth. And yeah, thank you all so much for coming as well. Thank you to people online. Thank you to Susanna for everything, for all of your support. It is really incredible to be here, so thank you. This is her, this is the girlie. So Encyclopedia is like in an abecedarian format, so it starts at A and it ends at W, because I didn't want to do the X's and the Y's and the Z's. I could have done, but it would have had to do like a X-ray poem or like a, yeah, it wasn't happening. So the first poem that I'm going to start with is called Au Pair, and this will be a bit of a anecdotal one. Joe was talking about yesterday anecdotal poems, and they've got a bit of a tough rep at the moment, but I think we're bringing them back. 2023 is the year. So a bit of context for this one. I was an au pair in Italy. It was awful. No, I was just quite sad at the time. And the family I lived with, they were vegan and they were celiac, which is really hard in Italy because obviously like every kind of pasta has gluten in it, right? That's not why I had a bad time, but but the boy there he was an only child, and I was his glorified playmate essentially, and he just said some like horrendous things to me. So I've rebranded his name in this poem, because I'm slightly scared he's going to open my pamphlet and it's going to say like, fuck you. And it's just like, he's like 9 now, so it's not, it's not great. So yeah, this is Au Pair. And then the kid makes a joke about a pointy hat and says, your trousers would fit in a paddy field. And then he says, God won't deliver you quick into kindness. And you don't hold anything extraneous, or even qualify with the parts that count. The parts that will get you through the golden gates and past the undulating men who resemble Peter Sarsgaard. And then his dad is looking at you in a funny kind of way at dinner, touching your feet. I say, fuck you. Fuck you, Benedetto. I'll spit gluten into your polenta. That will show you my good heart and my teeth that break at this time of month. Anyway, he was only 8, so I didn't do any of that and just asked for it with milk instead. Thank you. The second one is also based in Italy. So I was really sad. I was reading a lot of like Rilke's Letters to a Young Poet. People have read their really, really beautiful letters, and I came across this letter that was the 24th of February, and it was the 24th of February, and it was you've got the like timestamps and the locations. So it was based in Viareggio, which was mad because the town I was staying in was Pietrasanta, which was like a 2-minute drive, and it was this really like insane moment of this thing from the past, like touching out to, or reaching out to me in a place that felt really untouchable. And Rilke speaks a lot about like sculpture. So the town I was staying in were famed for like marble sculptures. And I used to kind of walk through these massive galleries and like admire these like alabaster nude women. Yeah, so this speaks to that a little bit. And it's called Body. Hello again. Old friend. Hello, foreign call. Old, tired spaceship that sometimes struggles to make it in the morning. Struggles to wake. Let me hold your hand. What will come away if not the beeswax and thread? The yarn for the French folds and gaps in the bind. The secret pockets that carry chopped thumbs, cherry tomatoes, and train tickets. Let's try rolling you out until you resemble a Helen Frankenthaler. Be a girl who is all for experiments. Reach into yourself and find a paste that is strict and fractious, the sting of sambal belacan. Pull that stuff out. Live your new dream life as a puddle of goo, a damp sheet of dough, unsuitable for lasagna but perfect for heavy clay and rose growing. I'm saying squeeze yourself between the stones of an aluminium printing press and lie back. Pretend you're on a beach in Viareggio. The soft whir of the waves as Rilke strokes the moles on your back. Thank you. Okay, this next one I'm going to do is called Fish Course. It used to be called... Susanna won't look at me. So it used to be called Fish Cum, C-U-M. But I was rightfully told it was probably best to rebrand it. But now I'm giving context to it, so was there any point? Yes. And it's basically about how one could say that orgasms resemble fish and water when you've got like the ripples radiating outwards. Potentially. I don't know if that's relatable for anyone. Fish course. On the train, I am explaining how an orgasm is the moment when you can't see the fish. But you know they are there because of the ripples radiating outwards. Against a blue plastic seat, you wriggle in wariness, and I think of the little grottos we have made that morning. You say, show me. So I paint the bed in UV, pronouncing, this is how I see the world. The whole coarseness coming apart in sandy fistfuls of electric green. I couldn't be white, even if I tried. Each stained finger, mouth in grossness. Each whisker like a fluorescent glow stick. I'm saying it's like a fish taking a series of breaths, rising to the surface as they break the tension on water. The carp I saw on the sleepers was a fox all along. The track is stained, is easing out of itself, releasing a stream of fallen leaves and Portuguese millipedes, whilst the carriage shakes, hot and drenched in urine, like an infinity room that cannot stand to touch itself. Here is the difference, the signifier between lack and lack. Thank you. Right, I think I'll do 2, maybe 3 more. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this actually, I'm gonna do the tripe one because me and Joe spoke about it this morning. Because Joe had black pudding at breakfast. Yeah. Won't give context for that. He's a vegetarian. So this one, a lot of the kind of poems in this pamphlet speak to like certain aspects of like ugliness or things that I can't comprehend, and like rendering them in a language that is like textured. And I've never had tripe, but I was listening to someone talk about it, and it was very beautiful. Like the language they were using, it was like almost floral. If you think about like the ruffling of it. So this one's about that, and you'll have to tell me what tripe tastes like, as well. Well, it's louder than you think, like the bone fragments of a gutted conch. Not like congee, but it cleaves the same, like entering a cherry orchard in autumn, seeing all the birds suckling Chustrong fun on the floor outside the cathedral, chewing berry wholeness, smacking gum like atomic bombs whilst the priests greet every ghost with ruffled collars of silk, like a magician asking you to spin into his arms as you hold the card in your mouth, the Sharpie an illusion sharpening on your tongue, the red heart of a quill pig inverted, all the needles facing in, producing a coat of just buccal mucosa. The best way is in honeycomb, or at a cricket match, or on a long piece of flatbread. Oh, it was absolute heaven, I'll say. Thank you. Right, I'll do two more. We might run over a little bit, if that's okay. Yeah. So this one is, I'm just going to read two stanzas from like a longer sequence that is like sits at the middle of the pamphlet. It's called Red is the Body Electric. I wrote it on Valentine's Day, and it was like at a point in my life where lots of different like intense things were coalescing. So it was Valentine's Day, and then it was, I think, Chinese New Year. It was 2 weeks before that. And like I hadn't got my period as well, and I was like, what's happened? Like all of these different lenses of like red are coming into my life. Obviously with cards for Valentine's Day. For Chinese New Year you get like the red slips of money, the ang paos, and then blood was the other thing. And I wrote this poem that is tackling like all of these things at once. So it's a bit of a like hot pot of stuff. So this is 4. I'll do 4 and 5. 4. My period comes on Valentine's Day, 2 weeks late. I took a pregnancy test, but forgot to use a morning sample, thereby jeopardizing the result. I asked someone to get a pack of paper strips. But why do you need 5? You never know. I imagine myself being pregnant 5 times. The double red strokes appearing thick and squat. I leave the test on the rim of the bath, the watery yellow mixing and unspelling the pigment. I want to carry all the blues inside me, like splitting oil. If I had 5 pregnancy sticks, I would have also had 4 abortions, which could be 4 doses of mifepristone and 4 doses of misoprostol, or 4 instances of vacuum aspiration, each lasting 10 minutes. Or I could have done a combination of both the pills and the surgery, breaking my lining down like tearing tinfoil. Of all the things I carry inside me, this is the worst. 5. Valentine's Day lands in the same month of sad, falling 2 weeks after Chinese New Year. The Ang Pao Reds carried forwards 2 oceans away. I am not at home for either holiday, and neither is Mum. I say Gong Si Fa Choi, though search it beforehand, to double check the spelling. I ask her if she's doing anything, and she doesn't reply. The text a photo of a club card voucher and a Google internship. Classic. You don't need a degree to work at Google. They train you and you can work from home. I go to Chinatown in Newcastle and all the Malaysian cafes are booked out. Pick the busiest looking restaurant with space. When ordering, I ask for a surprise, though really meaning a blue plate, a duck rice. 40 minutes later, a circular platter emerges with ice, yellow flowers, and flanks a salmon. In the middle is a pool of rose petals, white at the base, blushing toward the tip. Clam, the waitress declares, her favorite. Gummy and tasteless in my mouth, I smile at her dutifully. She is Chinese with a Glaswegian accent, and I wonder if she too is surprised when I speak. She places a wad of cardboard underneath the table to steady it, and suddenly a part of me wants to hold her, bury my face in her hair. Tell her I walked the whole of Tyneside looking for a pomelo. Recount that in the body electric, those parts most ruined will fizz like expired melon. That out here, the permissions to locate a bleed are never signed. We do our own surgeries, our own hash jobs, gesturing and cleaving in the dark. Look how good we're getting at shucking these bodies. Look at the clams that spill open from their filmy shells. We who are so lost, so out of love, choosing cruelty over language. Stacking plates as we collect the knives. Thank you. Okay, I'll do one more and then be out of your lives forever, unless you buy the book. This last one is called Sever. So I cut the end of my thumb off, not on purpose, but I was making an apology card, which isn't like a genre of things, unless you're me, and then it is, because you have to make apology cards for doing things. And I was using a cutting board. I really sillily put a plastic ruler instead of like a metal one, and I was using a scalpel because I like to get really, really straight lines for my cards. And it was an apology card, so it had to be like dead on. And obviously, the end of it came off. And I was like, oh, it's fine. Like, put it under some water. Just kept bleeding. Oh no. But I watched it like get stitched back on, so it was okay. But Plath wrote like the thumb poem. I'm sure people know that poem, where like the redcoats come out, they have to like climb back in. And I don't think there's any kind of relation between being a poet and cutting your thumb off. So don't do it. Oh, Tom's done it. You know what? If it's three,
How much thumb are we talking?
like, I mean, come feel it in a bit, but
Yeah,
we'll talk later. I've got no like. This is called Sever. Moon scallop in a pan. I scythe a thumb. Watch it squid and slip down the drain with the hair dye and goldfish. I fold a perfect circle, a dazzling pearl for a perfect boy, only meaning to cut a straight line for an apology card, but slipping quick with a box cutter and a plastic ruler. Scalpel slipping off the paper like a suit of Dalmatians. Lying in hospital, while something purple on my neck forms, ruling out pianos and conscription and becoming an astronaut. I propose with the best part of myself wrapped in tissue, in the cold sticking out like a sore whelk, the albumin spilling out alongside the ladybirds. Everyone tries to climb back into their body, but what is the point? I go oyster harvesting like the rest of you. Eat wet steak and press doorbells and peel eggs. I win every thumb war all the same. I can carry a gassy toast and jump off Egg Rock, singing glorious, glorious, extravagant, thinking this must be what love is like, thinking fuck the stitches. I'm going to bellow from the rooftops and not care where my red heart lands. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. One more round of applause for Serena, Tom, Beth and Chloe. We have got... there are pamphlets for sale. Some of their numbers are dwindling. If you can't find them on the bookstall, talk to the poets, because I think they will have more of them. And we have another event in just under an hour, is that right? Which is all about brains and consciousness and mental states, and so that's very exciting. So come back then.